something was pulling on me. And I was just like, I need to leave. So like, okay. So I was like, hey, dude, I'm going to roll back. There's too many of us here. I'm going to roll back. And I was like, I love you. And I remember seeing sweat dripping down the back of his neck. And he looked back. He's like, I love you too, bro. And I like push off and then go right back to where I was. As soon as I wrap through that gate to the outside wall, massive explosion. The house explodes. The war in the flesh overseas in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Africa is a cakewalk compared to the spiritual war. Something that we started, something that we blew up. That's our responsibility.
Savage is too nice of a word.
What do you say? He was having a rough day? It really comes down to this. How bad do you want it? Because that is what we think a man is.
They're setting you up for failure. They're sending you out on the battlefield with no weapon.
For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow.
You guys, we're going to do LIMA Chapter, if they're willing to die. This is going to be probably a tough one for you emotionally. A lot going on here. This is when the bubble of invincibility gets burst.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are in Iraq. I can't really keep track of the deployments at this point. Probably you can't either.
Yeah, it's probably deployment 4 or 5, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
And you're
with
this unit.
Well, no, it'd be total 4 or 5 total.
Okay.
Yeah.
At one point, talked about the enemies in Iraq not being as hardcore. Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is the exception, right? This is when you encounter some really bad dudes.
Yeah, I think it was actually last episode where Afghanistan were more engaged in the fight. But yeah, these guys were. Where we were fighting, they were wearing suicide vests or belts, and they were not afraid to use it. And we had multiple nights where they did use it.
And these guys had been, the way I understand it, regime guys.
Like his special forces guys or whatever, however that.
So they were the remnants of that back in the. Yeah,
they were operating in Iraq for quite a while. Like they were good at what they were doing. Doing harassment type things.
Basically, the SVS, the HBIZ, all that stuff totally changes the game for you guys. Tell me about the op where you, kind of an Overwatch position, you watch what this guy did to his family. Yeah, so again, in the book, is we were our forces were separated into 2 different places. So one team went to one compound and another team went to another compound. And nothing seemed to go down. The guys that were at another compound, we were at a further, I believe, south compound. The northern compound guys that were at that compound, there wasn't a lot going on. Like it was very quiet. Maybe a couple hundred, maybe 300-400 maybe meters away. And then so we posting up on ours, and we're let up on our compound, and we're letting those guys figure out, making sure they're good to go before we start ours. So they were good to go, it seemed, and then we started ours. And I remember looking, I was up on there was some dirt and some rocks. I like to say the word rubble. So there was awesome. Rubble. So I stood up on it, and it was kind of peeking. It offered a natural ladder for me to look over into the courtyard from this wall. So my whole body was pretty much covered besides I was super up with my gun like this. I was kind of pulling it back so I wasn't exposing by anything underneath or whatever. And it was just my head exposed. And I could see in the door. Remember, I kind of talk about being a breacher and kind of know where to go. Because my goal, everyone knows that my job is that door. Because I didn't know if we're assuming we're going to go into this house. Okay.
So we get up there and the door is open. And the lights are on inside. It's very dark. I think there might have been one light on outside, but very dim. And it was dark outside, light inside. I remember this guy, we just were about to start initiating. I think our terp said something, whatever he says, hey, come out. Because what we usually try to do is get the women and children to come out before we deal with the men, or ma'ams. We would call them military-aged males or military-aged men. And as soon as we started that call out or talking to them, there was a dude with a beard, and he just had pants on and no shirt. and it looked like there was something around him, but he had no gun. Like there was something around his waist, like a belt. So I'm like, man, is that? I couldn't tell. I just couldn't see in because the lighting difference. I'm on night vision, trying to go in between to try to see exactly what's going on. But he's like signaling and talking inside, and I don't know what he's doing. And what he's actually doing is these kids. He's like probably around 3 kids come to his side. And soon as his kids come, I'm like, okay, there's like a split second. All right, cool. This dude's just going to come out. It's just a guy with his kids because the people we were going after would not do this.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, maybe we're at the wrong place, or this guy's like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. I've got children. I'm just going to go, roll my dice with the Americans. So I'm like, okay, cool. So as soon as he brings it in, boom, he clacks himself up. He was wearing a suicide vest. And this goes back to, I'm more affected by the shots that I did not take over the shots that I did take. And those 3 kids, or 3 or 4 kids that were there, little girls, all dead. And I remember the house, before I was kind of blown back, is the roof of this house kind of lifted off the walls and like settled back down. It was nuts, man. I was like, holy crap. And like, I was like, dude. So the guys that are at this other compound were starting to they sent a couple guys down to help because we've got all kinds of stuff going on. Like I think there might have been a couple pop shots. I don't remember exactly what was going on, but we're dealing with this, and it leads us to another building, and it was kind of really nothing going on in this building. We're trying to find information from it because we had nothing, right. And I think 1 or 2 women escaped because they probably knew the men they were hanging out with. And then we get the worst call on the radio from the other compound saying that we've got eagles down. We have eagles down. And what that means is eagles are good guys, Americans, us, our brothers. And 2 of our guys got shot.
That was Mike and Nate.
It was Mike and Nate. So we went back up, and I remember that was the first time that we went up. When I remember walking by, not really realize I saw our guys, and we were kind of placing. We were just kind of, going to the left, going to the right, like taking our fields of fire where we were so that the medics could do what they did. And I didn't know exactly where they were. And we kind of round this corner, or we go past to get directions from the guys that are there at this compound. And I remember I see both of them, and I remember seeing Nate's last breath. And then I see Mike laying down there already gone. And just those images, that's the stuff that you cannot take out of your brain. Never take out of your brain, man. That was insane, dude.
There was like a machine gun position set up in a
room. So they were going in a room. They did everything they did. They tossed, from what I understand, a couple of frag grenades into this room because they knew there was a bad guy. The guy was behind a fortified position with a machine gun. And so when they walked up, we're walking in to the room. We actually talk about this, the fatal funnel, that doorway, the machine gun ripped them. They didn't even get inside, and it took them out. Both of them. I think one of them made it in the room to where one of our guys actually got in, had to go in there with this other guy still alive and pull out our guy so we get his body back in this room.
An entirely different kind of enemy.
Totally different. We didn't see this. I didn't personally see it. Our unit didn't personally see that. In Iraq, I mean, they would still shoot and they want to kill you, but not
blow themselves
again. What's the title of the chapter? Yeah. If they're willing to die, they didn't care. And it's like, dude, it's like,
how do you combat that?
That's a different level. Yeah. So again, they don't value life enough to where they're going to take their children. So I remember seeing the kids as like me as my American self. Oh, cool. There's kids. We're going to do this peacefully.
Good.
No. That's
not you and I would do anything. Would die to protect 100%. Our kids, and they're going to kill their kids.
They'll take everybody with them.
Yeah,
they don't care.
And then this is the same deployment, I believe, where you killed a bad guy and had some kind of hesitation after the fact. Right? Weren't sure, something about it made you uncomfortable.
Yeah, which is weird because it never happens. It was a weird, I don't know. I wonder if I could have handled it differently. I mean, the guy was armed, all these things. It just sat weird.
Right.
So it was enough. I think we're going back to what we found. Is that where we're going with this one?
Yeah.
So I went to the intel guys, like, hey, because we take certain things off target. I'm like, hey, if you find anything, let me know about this guy. First time I ever done it, and actually the last time I ever did it. And he's like, is everything all right? I'm like, yeah, I just want to know what's going on. Just
who is this guy?
Entertain me, please. And a couple hours later, he comes. I'm in my room, and he comes. He's like, hey, Eddie, I got something for you. I was like, all right, cool. So he takes me to the intel shack, and he pops in. He had a disc ready to go, and he hit play, and it's the guy that I just shot. Was so doing the logistical sport overseas as a company called Kennelbound Naruto. Was like big logistics, all the chow hall, all the truck drivers. Well, what this guy did and his buddies had some of these truck drivers, which were from like Thailand or the Philippines. They're from Asian descent. They had like 3 of them staked on the side of the road. Like there was just this big like wooden stake, and these guys were like tied on these posts. And what he did is he was doing ballistics on these dudes, these KBR truck drivers, not armed.
Innocent guys, just trying to make a living for their family.
And like, so they're like stabbing some, shooting some in this part, and it was like, it was that day. I mean, it was pretty bad before. I was pretty callous, but it was like, screw you, dude. Like, you don't get any like empathy from me or sympathy. Like you're not getting it from me anymore. Like I'm shut off. I'm the Rock now. Like I am a Rock. I have no emotions. I'm taking you out. That's all there is to it. Because it was hard to watch. I was like, I couldn't believe. It's one thing, and this might sound weird to some people. It's one thing to go shoot a guy and take him out. And it's another thing if I take a knife and start carving you to death and watching you die. It's another thing if I start doing ballistics on a human body, because that human has a family, has kids, has a life, has hobbies.
Was not a threat.
Was not a threat.
Right.
But just to whatever, I mean, just goes to show how demonic it is.
That's torture and murder versus a justified killing.
So he showed me that. So that's why, like, when people are like, I can't believe you would go over there and kill those innocent people, I was like,
that guy's not innocent.
You guys are idiots. Yeah. You have no idea what you're talking about. Please be quiet.
Yeah, and we're seeing right now in the news that sort of same brand of fanaticism.
Yeah, Israel's going off right now. I think we got 2 alerts while we've been recording. Like 14 Americans died and then 40 babies beheaded.
Yeah, who does that? I don't care where you are on the politics of that region and what's going on, but there's no
good and evil.
Period.
That's evil.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
By any definition.
That's what it looks like.
This is the first time going back to Mike and Nate. This is the first time you've lost guys that you were deployed with. Right?
This is the first time I've seen Americans, my boys, killed in action. That was my first.
And what is that? What does the rest of that night look like? Like, what is the aftermath?
A somber, a right word, Mr. Writer? Is that a good word? All right. So you're very, very somber, man. I was just like, we were all couldn't believe it, because that night we actually weren't even going to go out. But we did, and it was actually the night of the Super Bowl. I don't remember, I think we said in the book what Super Bowl was when the Giants played the Patriots, and Nate was a huge Patriots fan. Okay. And I was like, of course, I'm like, I hope the Giants win just to make him mad.
Right.
And that's where they had the helmet catch where the Giants did win. And like, I think we were there for like the last 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes of the game. And I was like, man, I hope the Patriots win just for him. I hope the Patriots win. And they didn't. But yeah, we all went into our like little room to debrief as best as we possibly could, because everyone was like, we were there, but we weren't there.
Right.
And
is there a ceremony or anything?
Yeah, so about a couple days after we figure out what to do, we do a little ceremony there, and then we get the bodies back to the States, to their family.
That's when Adam was home because he'd been hurt.
So Adam was home, and then when we lost those, no, he didn't come.
Because that's when you guys were in the stadium and he hurt his knee, I think. Right.
Yeah, I don't think he came until after the thing that happened a week later after those 2 deaths.
Okay.
I don't think.
All right.
But anyways, he came after a couple injuries and backfilled us because he was healed up now.
And some of your Army counterparts came in and filled in, right?
Yep. Tier 1 guys from the Army came up from Baghdad to kind of see what's going on. And they were on the op that I think we're about to lead into.
Is there cultural differences with those guys? They fit right in? Like, what was that?
No, man, I loved them. I from my perspective, what I saw is we're more of like I wouldn't say a wild bunch, more aggressive.
Okay.
They're more calculated.
Okay.
Mature.
Okay.
And I mean, if you know that Tier 1, they're bringing their guys in from every different field in the Army. Where ours are all coming from the SEAL team. It's come from the same place. So it's kind of the same breed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And they tend, I think, just their career path maybe tend to be a little bit older on the front end as they come in.
Yeah, I believe so. But they're awesome dudes. Like nothing but phenomenal things. They're amazing guys. And it was awesome. It was an honor to work with them. But they came up to see what was going on.
Okay, so they end up going out with you guys.
Because technically they were running Iraq at that time. We were in charge of Afghanistan.
Okay.
We would always send one group over to Iraq, and that happened to be us at the time.
Okay. And were they sending one group to Afghanistan, like sort of an exchange type thing?
They might have done a couple people. It wasn't like a group like the size of us.
Okay. So this is actually, as we constructed this book, this was the first chapter that we wrote.
This is the very first chapter we wrote.
Yeah. And the idea was, I like a story where we jump right into the action. Mm-hmm. And then we pull it back, and you're like, "Wow, I'm in. I want to know the backstory of this." Mm-hmm. And then we start back at the beginning, and then dealing with agents and publishers and all that. They kind of wanted to start at the beginning and let the reader get to know you as a child coming up and all that kind of stuff. But we wrote this first, and we spent a lot of time on it.
This is a rough chapter.
Yeah. So, and I've heard you speak about it in group setting since, and we had a conversation with Fro about it, which I think was really helpful for you. You got a little more perspective. But walk us through that night as best you can.
So after we lost Mike and Nate, this would be exactly, I think it was like 7 days later.
Okay.
It was like 1 week to the day later. So it wasn't our first op back. I think we were back opping like, I want to say 4 days. So this wasn't the first op back. So
what's that like when you go back out and all of a sudden, is there hesitation? Is there
slight hesitation? You're still doing your job, but you're noticing things that you didn't notice before. You're more meticulous. You're looking at things, and there is more of a pause before you commit into a room or go into a door or whatever it is for obvious reasons. So we go back on this target, same crew, and there's a compound.
Same crew of enemies.
Same crew of enemies, so suicide vest, all that stuff. So having known what was going on, my team leader was sick that day, so I was acting team leader, and there was mass confusion. We were starting to do the call out. We had the TERP call out, the women and children as before, and there was just a lot of commotion inside, and over time, we were starting to get the women and children to come out. That time, the team that was stacked, we had one team stacked on the outside wall of this house, and I was on the back side of there was a compound wall that went around the compound. Like there was an inner structure and then a concrete wall that went around. I was on the outside by the gate, so I could see the door, and then and Louis Souffrant was over here to my left, and he had a good angle of the door as well, and he could see inside. And so I called him over the radio, like, "Hey, bro, would it be good for you to go up to the front door?" And we decided that was a good thing. So I was like, "Hey, move up to the front door."
Louis is an EOD guy.
So Louis is an EOD guy, so he knows where to check on the people, making sure they've got no suicide vests, because that's where like our big thing that we're worried about. So he moves up and he gets behind this huge pillar. So there's like this huge pillar. And it's holding up. It's like on the far corner of this big overhang, and on the other catty corner under this overhang is the front door that I'm looking at that goes into this 2 or 3 story house. And where that front door is our other teams on. So there's our team, this front door, and then Louis right here with this overhang right here, and then it's like goes to the side yard or whatever. And so Louis going up there he's shuffling women and children over to back where I am, where the Terps are dealing with them. I think there's some officers, like they're patting them down or doing whatever they're doing with our security. And I'm like, okay, I'm going up, because we've talked about before, Tom's disease, terrified of missing stuff. So I went up, and I went up to go help with Louis. So I went right on Louis' shoulder, just like this. I put my left arm on his right shoulder, just like we are right now. And I was like, what do we got? And he's kind of like saying, we got some out. And he's kind of telling me things that I kind of witnessed back here. But he's got a different viewpoint into the door. I'm out here, that's a big difference, that foot. So I just kind of look over as we're looking down this door and I can see our team. I'm like, there's just something in me that prompted me like, dude, you need to leave. Because, in all our training is like, you never want to be like you're patrolling. You don't want to be bunched up if somebody throws a grenade or a mortar comes in, less casualties. If we're all bunched up and it hits the right spot, it's 4 casualty versus there's just 1 dude because we've got good dispersion. Or separation. So I was there and I was like prompted. I was like bro, it was like me saying, you need to leave now. It was so real. It was like something was pulling on me and I was just like, I need to leave. So like, okay. So I was like, hey dude, I'm going to roll back. There's too many of us here. I'm going to roll back. And I was like, I love you. And I remember seeing sweat dripping down on the back of his neck. And he looked back. He's like, I love you too, bro. And I like, push off and then go right back to where I was. As soon as I wrap through that gate to the outside wall, massive explosion, the house explodes. Mass chaos. I mean, mass chaos. Dust clouds, rock falling down. There might have been some pop shots of people kind of like into the target if they saw me. It was just mass. It was mass chaos. Mass chaos.
As if the building was demolished by like professional demolition guys, right? Like dropped.
Yeah, it didn't drop. It didn't drop all the way. It dropped about 3/4 away. There was like, I think the far side wall stayed up, but it dropped. And I was like, oh my God, our boys. Because we had that whole team stacked. And Louis was there. So I automatically, when the dust kind of settles, I go back to the middle of the front yard, like no cover, no nothing. I mean, anything that's in there is gone. And I put my foot down, and as I'm walking in there, and I kind of stop like on this little mound of rock, and I just feel this biting sensation on my foot. I'm like, what the heck? And I put my white light on it, and it was Digo, our dog. And he was like gnawing down on the first thing that came, which happened to be my foot. So I like ripped my boot out of it. I think I ripped a couple of his teeth out because he got titanium teeth after. A dog's tough as nails. So I went back to where I thought Louis was, and where I left Louis and where I thought he was, 2 different scenes, 2 different places. There was no more stanchion that was holding up that overhang. There was no overhang. There was no front of the building. But I could see that huge overhang that he was by. And it's like it kind of slid over. And I see one of our guys, I can see like half of his body. So I go and I'm like, oh no, one of our other guys just got crushed. And he's like, it was another dude. He's like, no, I got Louis, I think. And so I crawl in there with him and I found a leg and I'm trying to pull him out. And I remember grabbing his leg and there was like if I grab your arm, like I feel muscle and I feel bone structure. Like it's firm, right? Maybe not as firm as if you worked out, right. But you know what I mean? But it was like jello. Yeah. I mean, it was like if I grabbed hold of like putty or like a water bed. Right. You know what I mean?
No structure.
There was nothing. And he was pulverized. So the PJs then had to come in and they had those, do you remember the name of what that thing was?
They were Hava.
Hava? Okay, so they got these pneumatic, like, what are they, pillows or what would you call them?
Like an air bladder.
Like a pneumatic air bladder that they put under there. And it can raise up this huge tons of concrete, and they got them out. I mean, which is ridiculous. And they carried that stuff in their Bradley. They had all that stuff. But that was the op. A lot of survivor's guilt that went into that one because I called him and told him to go up to that point. I know that I'm not the reason why he's dead. I do know that, but still, there's still a piece of you that's like, if you just would have shut up, if you just wouldn't have said something to all the voices, and if I didn't send up to that front door, would he still be here? So, yeah, that's the op that if any op haunts me, that's the top one.
And you guys... He was the only one killed, correct?
Yeah, so that he was the only one killed that night. But there was like 5 injured guys. Took out a whole team. I mean, I think there was a double femur fracture, Benny, that we started doing that forward for that book. Yep. He had double femur fracture. I can't believe like how he got through that. Dude's like blown out knees, twisted ankle. Fro got thrown back
Right.
Against the wall.
Sent home.
And
ultimately
ultimately,
had one kidney.
And ultimately got sent home. And I think that was the end of his career from that op, I believe. But yeah, I think 5 and the 2 guys that came up from Baghdad from the army, they're tier 1, they were in on that door. So they got blasted too.
Oh wow.
So it was real. It was war. It was war.
How does, when you lose, if you think about it, I know obviously a huge human toll and emotional and all that, but the it's not like you can flip a switch and get another team of guys. I mean, that's a long pipeline. There's a limited number of folks who are qualified to do that. Like that one blast took a lot of capability away. Right?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. We had to get. They had to pluck guys from other squadrons. I think guys that wanted to volunteer, and they got them. And I think that's when Adam came back over.
Okay,
I believe.
So is it a payback time thing?
I mean, you can't help but think that in some ways. You want to get them no matter what, but now you really want to get them more. And plus, we had the 2 deaths a week before, so this is 3 now. So, yeah, it was very real.
And you guys, I think a really cool way that you guys honor Louis is he loved to spearfish down in South Florida.
Yep.
Where he grew up. He actually grew up a couple miles from where I did.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
What a coincidence.
Right. Another one.
So we did a thing, I think Dom and Jamie, I think his widow, they were the ones that kind of organized this whole thing, as they wanted, like, hey, why don't we do a yearly trip in February, go down there, do scuba dive, go to his famous or his favorite spearfishing spot, get some food, have a couple drinks, and go diving. Obviously, we'd have the drinks after the dive.
Sure.
And we would go down there, and they put a memorial down there on where the site was. So this big concrete with our coins and stuff like that. And so we put that down there. So that's been going on pretty much every year. And Dom's kind of like had that up. I've only been 2 or 3 times, I think, since. I think the last time was probably 3 or 4 years ago I went down there. But it's like, they put up a man-made reef.
Okay.
So I remember them putting it up like the second time I was there, or the first time, like there was nothing. Now it is like a thriving reef.
Wow.
With tons of, it's really
Perfect
cool.
Tribute.
And there's huge lion heads. Like it's really neat. It's really
awesome.
Cool.
I was I think I told you, I sent you a picture actually. Had an 8 or 9 hour layover in Miami on the way to Bolivia. And my father-in-law and I are wandering around. I mean, it's a lot of time to kill, right? Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't even let us into our terminal, so we're basically just walk around where people check in and things like that. And there was a memorial, like War on Terror guys from South Florida who had been killed.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it. And he spotted it. And he, of course, was at the event where you spoke about it in Alabama. And he said, it was just like one of those tangible, wow, this is what a small world, and this is a real thing. This is a real guy. It's a story in the book, and it's a story.
Real hero.
But that's a real tangible
hero.
For those of you that didn't listen to the Eric Frohart episode, I encourage you to do that. He gives his perspective. He was one of the guys.
He got blown back from the blast when that went off. Which is kind of funny, which I'm going to go into that conversation, which it brought some peace. Is when we were talking with Fro, we kind of dove into the faith piece a little bit. And I remember he gave a story about Louis. Is after we lost Mike and Nate, obviously Louis was on that op where we lost Mike and Nate. Louis was there as well. So I guess he approached Fro about his faith. And Fro, and Fro's given me the okay to speak on this, is Fro was very, I wouldn't say defensive, but just kind of like, I really don't want to share my faith with you.
Sort of personal.
He's like, this is about me, not you. And I believe that's kind of like what went down. I wasn't there for the conversation, but that's from kind of what Fro discussed on the podcast with us. And so I didn't know that that happened 2 days before Louis passed. So, it's kind of crazy is like, Fro being like, here I am. I will die for a flag. I think he said like, I'll die for the flag on my shirt, but I won't
talk about the cross.
I won't live for my faith. We'll talk about the cross. Like he's like, if I ever get the opportunity to speak on my faith, he's like, I do.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy how things that are.
I mean, that brought something out. Bro changed his life, his perspective on the word, changed your life. So
it probably changes many other lives just because him opening his mouth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there. And unfortunately, it doesn't really get lighter as the book goes on.
I don't think so.
Until the last chapter. It's a happy ending here, folks.
Oh, man.
But there's some tough stuff, and I know, it's been a lot of years, but these are real people to you, real friends, real pain.
Yep.
So I appreciate you sharing with me, and I know people appreciate you sharing with them. And
of course.
I'm sure these guys' families would take some comfort in knowing how many lives they touched.
Yeah, I know that a lot of these, like especially Louis, they've reached out and like they're all about it. They were about the book, and we sent them copies and all that stuff. They were very thankful that we
kept that name.
That we talked about them,
Yeah. Sure. Good deal. Well, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.